I feel something is brewing and something's about to explode. It was also influenced by Blake Lively's narrative.
Blake Lively just blew her own cover, and honestly, it's almost impressive.
She has a relationship with this writer, Megan Twohey, and the team.
After months of insisting she had nothing to do with that bombshell New York Times article from December 2020, she finally admitted that she was the source all along. With Brian Freedman's razor-sharp complaint set to drop on June 23rd, Blake saw the storm barreling toward her and chose to expose herself before it could wipe her out entirely.
And she told me, referring to Blake Lively, that Blake Lively told her something, which is pretty new information here.
Blake Lively just delivered a confession so dramatic it deserves its own Oscar. The Hollywood darling has officially imploded publicly and spectacularly. Yesterday, in what can only be described as the courtroom equivalent of setting herself on fire, Blake admitted to the very thing she spent months denying. Yes, Blake Lively admitted that she gave an interview to the New York Times. That feels like a recipe to self-destruct.
Remember the journalist who wrote "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine" about the alleged smear campaign against Blake Lively and how traumatized she was for all the SH that was going on?
Let's start with the infamous New York Times piece from December 2024. "We can bury anyone inside a Hollywood smear machine." This article painted Blake as the ultimate victim, a shining star crushed under the weight of a sinister Hollywood machine. According to the story, Blake had allegedly faced misconduct on the set of It Ends With Us and suffered a targeted smear campaign spearheaded by Justin Baldoni and his team. It was heartfelt, gut-wrenching, and perfectly curated for Blake's carefully crafted public image.
They never revealed anywhere that they actually based part of that article on interviews that they did with Blake Lively. There's nothing in that article that reveals that they actually spoke to her.
But here's where things took a turn. Blake adamantly denied any involvement in the article's creation, claiming they figured it out themselves. For months, she clung to this narrative like a lifeboat, using it to shield herself from criticism and bolster her victim status. And the NYT also never dared to mention it.
And she told me, referring to Blake Lively, that Blake Lively told her something, which is pretty new information here because New York Times never said that they actually interviewed Blake Lively for that story.
Yesterday, however, Blake's house of cards came crashing down. With a courtroom full of eyes glued to her, she finally caved. "Actually, I did give them an interview." The silence that followed was deafening, like the collective gasp of every person who had bought into her story.
Because they said that they only based their reporting on the CRD complaint, but Twohey here actually admitted that Blake Lively was a source.
This wasn't just a slip-up. This was the unraveling of Blake's entire facade. The same woman who positioned herself as a beacon of truth and resilience was exposed as the architect of her own narrative. She handed the New York Times the very details she swore they'd uncovered on their own. And let's not forget, the article wasn't just a sob story. It was a calculated weapon aimed squarely at Justin Baldoni's career.
So Blake Lively is saying here that she never has had plans to go public with her accusations against Justin Baldoni, and it wasn't really that bad.
Blake's confession doesn't just damage her credibility, it obliterates it. How can anyone trust the narrative of someone who lied about lying? The drama has shifted from It Ends With Us to It Ends With Blake. And honestly, it's the most gripping plot twist Hollywood's seen in years. The once revered Queen of Charm is now a cautionary tale, proving that even the brightest stars can burn themselves out.
You know, I spoke up because I wanted to address it, and I thought that I had, and I never had any intention of discussing this or going public with my accusations.
Blake Lively's innocence was always her strongest asset. A perfectly crafted facade that could disarm critics and win over fans without breaking a sweat. But here's the kicker. That innocence? It's as real as a Hollywood romance. The moment she decided to weaponize her sweet as pie image to orchestrate a career-ending smear campaign, she let go of the one thing keeping her untouchable. And now, It's floating away, as unreachable as that balloon at a kid's birthday party.
Well, this gives Justin Baldoni's legal team new arguments that New York Times article wasn't just based on facts.
Now, let's talk about Brian Freedman, the legal powerhouse representing Justin Baldoni. He's been sharpening his sword for days, meticulously crafting an amended complaint that promises to cut through Blake's web of lies. Set to drop this legal bombshell on Monday, June 23rd, Freedman's revised complaint is rumored to be razor sharp, leaving no room for misinterpretation. And our so-called Queen of Hollywood charm? She saw the writing on the wall and decided to throw herself under the bus before the legal smackdown could obliterate what's left of her already tattered reputation.
And so, to watch what happened next and to experience what she now is alleging was the complete campaign of retaliation felt in many ways much more sinister than the underlying misconduct.
Blake's confession wasn't some noble act of transparency. It was pure, unfiltered panic. With Freedman's complaint looming like the sword of Damocles, she knew that the house of cards she's been precariously balancing was about to come crashing down. This wasn't about taking accountability or doing the right thing. No, this was about getting ahead of a narrative that she could no longer control. And let's be honest, it's not even a good attempt.
So in Justin Baldoni's lawsuit, he accuses Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively of colluding with the New York Times. And I think explicitly it says for months that they were plotting with the New York Times for months to smear him.
Freedman's amended complaint isn't just some rushed paperwork thrown together in a few hours. Sources say he's been taking his time, gathering every shred of evidence and meticulously connecting the dots. Emails, texts, timelines, you name it, he's got it. Freedman's reputation as a legal bulldog precedes him, and he's not about to let Blake slip through the cracks with her carefully curated sob story. The word on the street is that this complaint is going to hit Blake right where it hurts, exposing every lie she's told and every narrative she's twisted.
Maximum Effort Productions. This is the same production company, the same marketing company of Ryan Reynolds. We all have heard of Maximum Effort Productions. We've heard of them.
Why the sudden change of heart? Simple. Blake's terrified. Freedman's complaint isn't just going to poke holes in her story. It's going to tear it apart at the seams. She knew that once Monday rolls around, her lies would be laid bare for the world to see. And rather than wait for Freedman to strike the killing blow, she decided to throw herself on the sword first. But let's be real. It's not bravery. It's self-preservation at its most pathetic.
And there's something in that amended complaint that, oh my God, I can't wait to read it.
So here we are. Just days away from the legal reckoning Blake tried so hard to avoid. Freedman's complaint promises to be a masterclass in accountability, while Blake's confession is already being dismissed as too little, too late. The Queen has officially fallen, and come Monday, the world will finally see just how dirty her game really was. Stay tuned, because this train wreck is far from over.
When she first came out with all this, I went, what an asshole he is, you know? And
Everyone did.
As a daddy girl, you know, a girl daddy, I thought, oh my God.
Girl dad.
I was really angry.
Think about it. The very idea that Blake, America's sweetheart, could meticulously plan to ruin Justin Baldoni's career and sabotage It Ends With Us is both audacious and chilling. We're not just talking about petty gossip or snide remarks here. Blake went full corporate espionage mode. Sources allege she and her team, led by the infamous Leslie Sloan, fed carefully curated stories to major media outlets. These weren't innocent misunderstandings, they were calculated character assassinations.
It looks like Justin Baldoni may have a very strong case against the New York Times. You're not going to believe this, okay? This pertains to data.
Justin's reputation was dragged through the mud. He was labeled everything from controlling to predatory, and it wasn't just his name at stake. His movie, the culmination of years of work, became collateral damage in Blake's master plan. Reports show that by August 2024, months before Blake even filed her so-called retaliation lawsuit, negative articles about Justin were flooding the press. Coincidence? Hardly.
Blake Lively is not a good person, that she has proven herself not to be a kind person, okay?
The Hollywood actress Blake Lively has filed a legal complaint against her. It Ends With Us co-star Justin Baldoni, alleging sexual harassment and a campaign to destroy her reputation.
Let's start with the lawsuit, the so-called smear campaign saga that Blake herself lit the match for. In her case filed in November 2024, Blake went after Justin Baldoni and his team, claiming they leaked confidential information about her. Sounds dramatic, right? Well, here's the kicker. Her lawsuit didn't mention a single word about the alleged sexual harassment that was supposedly the foundation of her grievances. Nada. It's like filing a police report for a burglary, but forgetting to mention your missing TV.
She sees herself as Khaleesi from Game of Thrones, mother of dragons.
What Blake did focus on, though, was the Vanzant Inc. subpoena. She fought tooth and nail to secure emails and text messages, claiming they'd prove Baldoni's team was out to get her. But guess what? Those messages showed a lot of Blake's own hypocrisy instead. Negative articles about Justin Baldoni, those started rolling out in August 2024, a full 9 days before Melissa Nathan, Baldoni's crisis PR expert, was even hired. Convenient, right? Here's the timeline for context. Melissa Nathan joined Baldoni's team in early September 2024. Yet by August 25th, there were already dozens of articles painting him as controlling and abusive. Who's running the smear campaign, Blake? Because your fingerprints are all over the scene of this PR crime.
A man being fully castrated by a woman who is using toxic feminism.
Now let's talk about Blake Lively's confession and courtroom meltdown. For months, Blake denied giving an interview to the NYT. She confidently claimed, "I didn't share anything with them. They just pieced it all together." Sure, Blake. Because we all know investigative journalists just magically stumble upon private, insider details. But yesterday, the truth came out, and it hit harder than any of her PR-crafted one-liners. She admitted, on record, that she had indeed spoken to the Times. Suddenly, the woman who built a career on her innocent, wholesome image is caught red-handed in a lie so big, it might as well be a plot twist in one of her movies.
Taylor Swift is declaring, "I am nobody's dragon, girl. I am not your dragon. I've stayed quiet. I've stayed away. But girl, now that I'm getting dragged in this, you're about to get run over."
And then, the meltdown began. Sources inside the courtroom describe Blake as visibly agitated, her voice quivering as she tried to explain why she had misremembered the details. Misremembered? Blake, you don't misremember an entire interview with one of the most renowned newspapers in the world. That's like forgetting you're the lead in a movie.
So negative press swirled around her during this whole, like a month, right? Later, she would describe this as though it was the pile-on against Trump. Honestly, it's like most of us, especially in Republican politics or the news, this is called Tuesday for us.
What's worse is how blatantly transparent her motives became. When questioned about the timing of her allegations against Justin Baldoni and her supposed retaliation claims, her answers fell apart faster than It Ends With Us box office projections, down 40% since the controversy erupted. Blake admitted that her focus wasn't entirely on misconduct or harassment, but rather on protecting her reputation. Let that sink in. The same woman who built her narrative around being a voice for survivors essentially confessed that this was never about justice. It was damage control. The numbers don't lie. Articles attacking Justin began circulating as early as August 2020, months before Blake's claims surfaced publicly. By the time Melissa Nathan, the so-called architect of Justin's PR team, even entered the picture, there were already dozens of stories framing Justin as a villain. Blake's accusations about him launching a smear campaign? The timeline doesn't hold up, and the court wasn't buying it.
So basically what she's saying here is what Blake Lively did to herself by behaving the way she did is much worse than what she's accusing Justin Baldoni of doing to her.
But perhaps the most telling moment was when the judge pressed Blake on her evidence. Asked to provide proof of this alleged retaliation, Blake could only muster vague anecdotes and unverified accounts. No hard facts, no emails, no paper trail. It was all hearsay. And in a court of law, hearsay doesn't cut it.
So Blake Lively is continuing her delusional path forward, thinking that somehow she can get out of this lawsuit if she has just enough of the right PR and Hollywood friends on her side.
Blake's meltdown wasn't just a personal disaster, it was a public unraveling of her credibility. For years, she's wielded her charm and star power to control the narrative, but now, the narrative has slipped from her grasp. The Queen of Hollywood Grace is officially dethroned, and the world is left wondering, was the real Blake Lively always this messy, or is this just the fallout from years of unchecked ego? Either way, it's not a good look, and no amount of Betty Boos can wash this one down. Now, Blake's public narrative was all about being a victim. She painted herself as the brave woman standing up against the Hollywood patriarchy. But let's zoom in on the details. Her lawsuit was suspiciously vague. While Blake told the public she was fighting against harassment and misconduct, her legal documents focused solely on confidential information and reputation management. It's almost like she was more upset about people knowing the truth than anything else.
We've got these messages about, this long friendship between these two girls, and she knows the real Taylor.
And speaking of contradictions, let's talk about Blake's star power and how she's used it. Blake wasn't just a Hollywood darling, she was a force to be reckoned with. But with great power comes great responsibility, or in her case, great irresponsibility. She leveraged her influence to bulldoze over anyone who got in her way. From reporters to subreddit moderators, no one was safe from the Lively machine. Take the It Ends With Lawsuits subreddit. This neutral space turned into a propaganda hub practically overnight in June 2025. Moderators who didn't toe the pro-Blake line, kicked out. Discussions questioning her narrative, deleted. It's almost like Blake thought she could rewrite the internet to fit her version of the story. Spoiler alert, the internet doesn't work that way, Blake.
I think that's right. I think, Blake was threatening, months before the New York Times thing happened. She was constantly threatening different things. At one point she's threatening, I'm not going to promote this movie if I don't get my way on this.
But let's not forget the promotional tour for It Ends With Us, the real beginning of Blake's downward spiral. While promoting a film about domestic violence, she was busy pushing her alcoholic beverage brand, Betty Boos. Classy, right? One news anchor even cracked open a can of her booze on air while discussing the film's themes. And if that wasn't tone deaf enough, Blake hosted a premiere party in December 2024 with themed cocktails named after the film's characters, including the abuser. Yes, you heard that right. Fans were outraged. Book talk exploded, Colleen Hoover's fan group revolted, and domestic violence advocates were furious. Blake managed to alienate an entire fan base in record time. It's almost impressive, if it weren't so disastrous.
Yeah, I think we've noticed over the past couple of weeks even there have been a few clips that have come out of the woodwork essentially about Ryan that sleuths have found with some kind of problematic moments. And then there's also been the whole kid pool controversy, which definitely doesn't make him look great either.
And with all this drama, Blake Lively's life is unraveling faster than a poorly tied bow. Word on the street is that her personal life is in just as much chaos, with rumors swirling that Ryan Reynolds, her once rock-solid husband, is planning to walk away. Yes, the Ryan Reynolds, the man who seemed like he'd stick with Blake through thick, thin, and her Betty Boos blunders, might be calling it quits.
Now here Freedman is quoted in TMZ. Let's look at what he said. Mr. Reynolds' exploitation of his enormous power in Hollywood continues, this time arrogantly asking to be dismissed from the case despite his publicly documented involvement, extending far beyond just being a supportive spouse.
Let's talk about why this isn't as shocking as it might initially sound. Ryan has built his brand on charm, humor, and a kind of self-awareness that makes him relatable despite being absurdly wealthy and famous. Blake, on the other hand, has spent the last year embroiled in a controversy so messy it could be a reality TV plotline. From her legal battles to her ill-fated PR campaigns, it's been one disaster after another. And if there's one thing Ryan's public image can't afford, it's to be dragged down by his wife's train wreck of a reputation.
What a manipulative, lying little twerp she is. I cannot stand her for this.
Sources close to the couple have hinted at growing tensions behind the scenes. Ryan, ever the diplomat, reportedly tried to support Blake through the "it ends with us" drama, but even his patience has limits. After Blake's courtroom confession, a bombshell that exposed her as a liar to the New York Times and beyond, Ryan is said to have reached his breaking point. He's allegedly been distancing himself, spending more time on solo projects and with their kids, away from the media circus Blake has created.
It's just a joke. You don't get it? You're thin-skinned if you're upset about it. That is how insane this is.
Let's not forget Ryan's own career is flourishing. His production company is thriving, he's got multiple blockbusters in the pipeline, and his image as the lovable Deadpool dad is untouchable. But now, everything is crumbling. To support his wife, he went a little too far, and now companies are breaking deals with him. And it's not just the professional fallout, it's personal too. Ryan values authenticity and humility, traits that Blake's recent actions seem to lack. Her relentless attempts to control the narrative, weaponize feminism, and vilify Justin Baldoni have painted her in a deeply unflattering light. For a man like Ryan, who thrives on being perceived as grounded and approachable, Blake's antics must feel like the polar opposite of his brand.
I cannot get into the layers of how that is exactly how bullies operate. If you've ever dealt with a bully, if you've ever seen bullying.
The final nail in the coffin? Rumors of heated arguments at home, with Ryan allegedly confronting Blake about the toll her actions are taking on their family. Their once playful, picture-perfect banter has reportedly soured, replaced by tension and frustration. Friends of the couple have speculated that Ryan is seriously considering his options, weighing whether staying in this marriage is worth the collateral damage to his personal and professional life.
So Ryan Reynolds basically admitted that he'd been calling Baldoni a predator.
If Blake's losing Ryan, it's not just another tabloid headline. It's a monumental shift in the narrative she's tried so hard to control. The woman who once had it all, career, family, and public adoration, now seems to be losing it piece by piece. Whether or not Ryan ultimately leaves, one thing is clear. The cracks in their seemingly perfect union are now on full display, and they're just as glaring as the ones in Blake's carefully constructed facade. At this point, the meltdown isn't just epic, it's historic. And the irony, Blake's star power, once her greatest weapon, is now the very thing dragging her down. Stay tuned, because this train wreck isn't stopping anytime soon.
Blake Lively is so stuck playing checkers and trying to make up lost time and justify all this nonsense. And, oh yeah, that was really a win for us. Girl. Anybody who's paying attention knows you're getting destroyed.
Blake Lively has gone from a shining star to a cautionary tale. And honestly, it's been a spectacle. Hollywood's darling, known for her charm and perfect image, has managed to torch her own credibility with a series of cheap, calculated moves that scream desperation. Let's talk about how Blake Lively ruined herself. Blake's attempt to control the narrative has backfired spectacularly. From manipulating the press to taking over subreddits, her every move has been exposed for what it is: a desperate bid to save her image.
It's just deranged. It's nonsensical. Like, fire the whole PR team. It's dumb.
But here's the thing about cheap tactics. They don't work in the long run. Instead of garnering sympathy, Blake has alienated fans, colleagues, and even the advocacy group she claimed to support. Her credibility is in shreds, and Hollywood is starting to take notice. Blake Lively had it all: fame, fortune, and fans. But her obsession with control and her refusal to take accountability have turned her into a pariah. The numbers don't lie. Her career is on shaky ground, her fan base is dwindling, and her reputation may never recover. Maybe next time, Blake will think twice before playing the victim while pulling the strings. Until then, we'll be here, watching her house of cards collapse. If you have come this far, like this video and subscribe to the channel to know how much more truths are hiding.